Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Rusty. Kim Mitchell is on her way up to offer our invocation for us today.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for the opportunity to gather as servant leaders, working together to make a difference in our communities. We ask that you would empower us to be bold and fearless leaders. Lead, guide, and direct us in all that we say and do. We ask for special prayers for the leaders of our country. We pray that they would turn to the one true example to lead us by, and that is your word. Lord, we now ask that you bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies and our bodies to our service to you. Please continue to bless each and every one of us so that we may in turn be a blessing to others. We pray all these things in the sovereign name of Jesus. Amen.
You may be seated. Thank you so much, Kim. We've done a good job this year of getting our new members involved in a lot of things. And Kim's said the invocation a couple times. She's welcomed new members. She's doing a great job. Now I want to welcome up Nicholas Beasley, another new member. He is going to introduce our visiting Rotarians and guests.
We'll begin with our two visiting Rotarians today. Jim Cruzy is here. Jim, if you'll stand up. And Jim's a member of the Chapin Sunrise Club. Another member of the Chapin Sunrise Club is here as well, John Stickney. Who's John? Right here. And I believe you introduce any visitors that you have with you. We send the microphone out to you. Buck's got it. General Schuler has. If you'll stand with your visitors, Buck will bring you the microphone.
Good afternoon. I have as a guest today Mr. James Devine. He is the chair of the Richmond 1 Board of Commissioners.
Jim Morris with SE Economics. I have as my guest Jan Rogers. Jan is a consultant that does a lot of solar and business development. Also a recent medical retiree from the Special Ops community.
It appears that you all are visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate you doing that. I saw an email before I came here, some good news on it. I just wanted to share with you. Real quick announcement from me. One of our past Rotary scholars is a young man named Xavier Douglas, and he went on to USC to study mathematics. He just graduated this year, and he sent an email out to Debbie, and Debbie forwarded it on to me and others in the club just to thank us for helping him get his education. You know, he received $20,000 from the Columbia Rotary Club for his education. He got a bachelor's degree, a bachelor's in science and mathematics, and he's gone on to enter a one-year program at USC to get his master's in teaching, and he plans to teach high school here, teach mathematics in high school. So it's really a great thing, and rarely do I get that sort of feedback to know exactly what's going on. But 4 years ago, he was standing at this podium telling us about his plans, and here he is. He's done it, and he's going to do bigger and better things. So it's just good news I wanted to share with you guys. I would like to invite past President Roger Stroop to the podium. One of the things we started this year through past President Michael Kahn's leadership was these Rotary information moments. If you're in the club for a long time, you forget some things about Rotary, and anyway, today's topic, which Roger will tell you more about, is Rotary's legacy of service. So I'll let him share with you.
Thank you, President Stephen. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things we've done in the past to provide some service and support to others. As you all know, the primary purpose of this club is service, and during the past 102 years, we've undertaken a variety of service projects and support for many local organizations. The first service project I've been able to document occurred at the club's second meeting on January 8, 1917, when one member indicated he made a donation in the club's name toward the community Christmas tree, several members quickly followed his lead. Also in 1917, the club supported the Associated Charities Fund Drive, and that's the forerunner of the United Way, raising $4,317, that's almost $60,000 in today's terms. Also during the Christmas season in 1917, the club voted to take up a collection for the Doors of Hope, a home for unwed mothers. At that same meeting that they took up that collection for the Doors of Hope, a second motion passed that directed in the future no other collection should be taken up for any purpose. Thank goodness we violated that rule thousands of times. In 1921, the club began the long tradition of supporting the Boy Scouts by pledging $6,000 per year for 3 years. That's a total of $81,000 in today's currency. The first really big undertaking of the club that would eventually lead to Camp Barstow. For many years, the amphitheater at Camp Barstow was named the Rotary Amphitheater. In 1922, for example, we sponsored a dinner to support a group of Boy Scouts who were bicycling to Washington, D.C. This is a photograph of the exterior of that program, and this is the menu. And this was probably held at the Jefferson Hotel, which is where we were for many, many years. Beginning in 1925, the club was active in raising money for the Community Chest, a program sponsored by the Chamber, and today is known as the United Way. Over the years, our club has been a staunch supporter of the United Way, and many of their volunteers and campaign chairs have come from this club. In 1919, the club sponsored a swimming outing for children from local orphanages to what was then called Victory Park, known today as Hyatt Park.
You're going backwards.
During the 1920s and 30s, the club took underprivileged children and orphans to the state fair and to the circus, paying for their admission, their rides, and their foods. In 1930, as the Depression was settling in on the country, the club took over 500 children to the fair. In 1928, we initiated our college scholarship program, our current Columbia Scholars Program, where we provide $20,000 scholarships to local students who attend an in-state college or university. During the 1950s, the club sponsored a Little League baseball team in the Rosewood Little League, and that for a time was coached by a movie player, who a few of you veteran folks remember, I'm sure. 1922, the club collected a pickup truck full of magazines from Girls Industrial School. That's the forerunner of the women's prison. In 1955, the club collected 550 pairs of shoes for Carolina's Children's Home. The club continues as an active supporter of the Salvation Army, the United Way, and the Red Cross. But our support for the Red Cross doesn't go quite as far as it did on November 12, 1951, when the meeting program consisted of a member demonstrating how easy it was and painless to give blood. Of course, today we support the Rotary Foundation, which was founded in 1917. The club has been a strong supporter of the foundation, donating well over $1 million. In the 1980s, when Rotary embarked on eradicating polio, in 1985, the club immediately accepted its requested goal and has always surpassed that in subsequent campaigns. And finally, today, one of our major programs is the CART Fund, which we've been supporting since 1995. So that's just a quick look at a number of things that the club has done over the years to support local organizations.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate the time and energy you put into that. It's a good reminder and a very proud legacy that our club has to be proud of. So we were collecting books for the Free Little Library Project, and we're no longer collecting books, but past President Michael has taken it upon himself to give me some summer reading. The fire engine book and the Berenstain Bears go to the science fair. Anyway, we're done collecting books. We have enough now, but I appreciate this. We'll make sure these are the last 3 books entered in there, and thank you for your support of that project as well. And with that, I'd like to welcome Andy Shane to the podium to do Health and Happiness.
Everybody has to lower the mic after you speak, Stephen. Even us tall guys like me. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, Ron Hunziker was very good in reminding everybody that tomorrow at 6 o'clock at Boyd Plaza, the South Carolina Philharmonic, we'll be playing a free concert outside. Actually, the weather's supposed to be, I think, maybe breaking up by then with all the rain, and also it's not been as hot, so hopefully that'll be a nice time, especially as you know, the evenings actually have been rather nice. During this heat wave, the humidity hasn't quite hit us yet, so it sounds like a good time out there. And Rusty reminded me of a birthday today, that it's Prince Philip's 98th birthday today. It's amazing to think that that the king and queen, or the prince and queen of England are obviously doing so well at such an age and all that. I wish we all could. And I guess, you know, because there wasn't a lot of health and happiness as I sat at the table, I sort of teased and said I would ask the congregation if anyone had anything, some good news to share, some interesting news to share, that maybe you didn't share with me while I was sitting up there, but we want the, as I said, the congregation to know about. Going once.
Hold on, we received an email from Ruth Siegler, Siegler. She just wanted to thank everybody since her stroke for all of the cards, prayers, and notes. She spent 3 weeks in rehab and came home on Easter Friday.
Wonderful, that's great, that's good to hear, that's good. Wonderful, thank you for sharing, thank you for sharing that, thank you for picking that up. Oh, sorry, yes, yes, Rusty.
Alan Robinson was not here last week when his birthday was announced.
Yes, that is correct.
But he is here today. There he is. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
I had a great birthday present the same day as my youngest son graduated from
Wonderful, that's great to hear. Well, as I said, that's good. So, on to the health and happiness. They give me both. You know, I don't know why. I mean, I can take one or the other, but they always give me both. But as many of you know, I am a reporter with the Post-Courier, and you know, I report on a lot of different things. And one of the things I decided to do is also do some reporting on the leadership of this Rotary Club. So I managed to get into maybe some of the files, secret files, as Stephen is now wrapping up his term. And you know, he's had a really good term. I'm not gonna, I mean, obviously in a couple of weeks we're gonna talk a lot about that. Yeah, there we go. But unfortunately, I found some things that maybe he wasn't really that proud of, and so I just wanted to share with them with those today. You know, like every new president at the Rotary, he wanted to change things up a bit, and some of his ideas didn't quite hit the mark. One of his suggestions was tuna casserole every week for lunch as the only entree. Another thought that just didn't quite go over very well is replacing the national anthem with Sandstorm. I mean, yeah, it would kind of get us hyped up, but maybe kind of miss the message there. He proposed 3 types of iced teas every lunch: sweet, unsweet, and Long Island. Now that one might have been popular. I'm not sure we could do that. You know, again, to jazz things up, every 3rd Monday he wanted to do an indoor fireworks display. Just not sure the ceiling was high enough. I mean, you know, obviously. He also wanted to bring in a new mascot, Roscoe, the Rotary Rooster. You know, maybe to get us up every day. And then he thought maybe we needed to have a dress code and maybe make all the meetings black tie. I just didn't know if that was going to really go over very well. Some of the more controversial things he tried to do that fortunately I have found out about and didn't happen was adding ways to the 4-way test, some of the suggestions that he had. First of all, some of the questions he wanted to raise was, why not just use your gut? Can you help me find my car keys? What the heck were you thinking? Should I swim right after lunch? And finally, will you ever forgive me? I think that would have been a good part of the 4-way test to add all that. You know, and for a fundraiser, of course, we had the bocce ball fundraiser, which was a big success. I think we all enjoyed doing that. But his original idea for it, we kind of had to talk him out of it, which was doing it Fort Jackson style, which instead of using bocce balls, we were going to use grenades and mortars. Fortunately, the Fireflies put the kibosh on that, but I think that would have made it kind of scoring a little hard to figure out which crater was closest to the balls. His other thoughts included a Game of Thrones trivia contest where we all would be in costume, the 24 hours of karaoke, an axe throwing tournament, William Tell style, so obviously someone would be there trying to win it, I did. The dynamite fishing tournament, where, you know, obviously we're supposed to throw some dynamite and see how many fish you get. There was a paintball tournament idea that he pitched. Rotary presidents and ex-Rotary presidents against everybody else. I think that would have been fun. Another way we was thinking about trying to raise some money, you know, we sell a lot of things, onions, grapefruits and such. But what about leftover state fair food? He was just thought that might be a way for us to generate some money. And finally, he developed this Shark Tank idea. I loved it. You know, we love this show. It's really wonderful until he explained how we would all be in a tank with real sharks. And I really don't think that will help membership if we were all that. So, you know, these are some of the things I learned from his presidency that didn't quite work out. Now that said, Louisa Campbell is going to be our new president, and she, of course, was in charge of speakers this year. And as she's coming in, I think you need to know that not all of her ideas were the best ideas. So here are some of the themes that did not quite make the cut of the 40 or so speakers that we had. Carrot cake, a pathway to hell. Investing advice with the money you find in the card buckets. Alternate uses for backhoes and bulldozers. Now that's one I think I would have liked to have heard. And then there were some holiday themed ones that she had. Hiding Easter eggs in a way that no one can ever find them. Ways to carve your Thanksgiving tofu. And holiday gift ideas from your spouse, presented by Hickory Farms, which of course would be followed by how to sleep on a couch comfortably. She also wanted to do some how-tos as well. There was this idea that she had about how paper clips are made, a month-long seminar. How to solve arguments using sharp objects, I mean, always useful. How babies are made, and you know, I don't know about anyone else, I think I would have looked forward to the photo presentation with that one. And finally, I think one that's very appropriate for a lot of us, how to get out of the doghouse of your own making. So again, I'm sorry that these things didn't work out, but I think you need to know about your leadership. But thank you at all, and please have a pleasant Monday.
But for your journalism, Andy, all of those things could have happened. So thank you for saving our club from certain disaster, and appreciate all the time and energy you put into health and happiness as always. But you know, if you're gonna make an omelet, you've got to crack a few eggs. So you got to try some new ideas. We've got a special presentation today. Somebody who was not introduced when we were introducing visiting Rotarians, and that is our current assistant governor and a past member of this club, Eric Davis. Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Glad to be here once again and in this great club. I see a lot of people out there that I'm going to have to get with after the meeting. I haven't seen them in so long. I came today to present two things. The first is your leadership citation for this year. Stephen, under Stephen's leadership, you won this citation. Congratulations. And this next one is a personal gift from me. I really appreciate all of your efforts as president, and also all the things you've done throughout the year to help me and assist me. Thank you.
Kind of special. You stick around long enough, and you know, people go kind of easy on you in June. It's nice. Carrie, I see you nodding your head back there. We're running a few minutes ahead of schedule, but we've got a great speaker today who I know is going to bring about a lot of questions. Is there any club business, any questions anybody has that they'd like to open up briefly? All right, well, let's get right into it. We have Captain John Stickney here today. He is a member of the Chapin Rotary Club, and he is going to introduce our speaker.
Here we go. Thank you, Stephen. I am here as president of the Columbia Council of the Navy League, and also bring greetings from the Chapin Sunrise Rotary Club. We have a couple of members here amongst us. The speaker today came out of Sumter and went to the University of South Carolina, graduating there in 1986 with a degree in economics and a commission as ensign in the United States Navy. seeing a degree in economics, the Navy in its wisdom sent him to the engineering department of the Carrier Ranger. They do this. He escaped from the large carrier and got into the amphibious warfare business, where he stayed in primarily sea duty in landing ship docks, or dock landing ships. I think that's a local option. And that career moved to a height as he was commanding officer of the USS Whidbey Island and then the USS Macon Island on its maiden deployment, which is always fun and challenge for the skipper. His shore duty has consisted of a number of staffs, including in the Pentagon itself, amphibious staffs, Naval War College, Naval Postgraduate School, and he is currently the commanding officer. He also had an interesting tour in hurricane relief and recovery in Haiti 3 years ago after Hurricane Matthew came and visited that island. So he is a good background. He is Expeditionary Strike Group 3 currently out of San Diego, with orders in September to become the commandant of the National War College. That's right. I went to that course for a while. So I'm very pleased and proud to present Rear Admiral Cedric Pringle, Commander Expeditionary Strike Group.
So good afternoon, all. So I want to touch bases on a couple of things that John said. John, first and foremost, thank you very much. It was awesome last year working with you at Chapin High School and with the JROTC unit there. And I'm pretty sure you and Stephen probably talked, and you guys shared the fact that I love coming back to South Carolina, and so I appreciate the invitation to come back and speak to this group. So I've got about a 50, 60-minute speech right here. But based on two things. One, I am home. This is my home. South Carolina is my home, and I feel at home. So with that, I won't go with the formalities. I'll just go with the, let's talk about what's happened to me in my life and the blessings that have been bestowed upon me over the course of my 32-year career. Because yes, I am from Sumter. Yes, I am an eternal Gamecock. Graduated from Sumter High School and graduated from the University of South Carolina. And yes, I also joined the Navy to see the world. I really just wanted to go places, do things. I wanted to challenge myself. And John has heard this story before. I have a brother. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. So by the time it got to be my turn to go to college, the money ran out. So I was fortunate enough to actually get a Navy scholarship and go to USC for 4 years, and the Navy then paid for both of my master's degrees as well, which is also a blessing. But when I was in high school, my brother was in the Navy enlisted, and he would send home postcards, and usually with the younger crowds, I have to explain to them what postcards are, since they do emails and Snapchat and all those other things nowadays. But he would send home postcards, and it really just made me curious about what the Navy did and how we did it. And it's amazing to me how many people still don't know what the Navy does for a living. So part of my goal this week, started out early this morning on Fox 57. I had a 0600 show time there, and honestly, we got in last night at about 1:30 a.m. And I got to bed about maybe about 3 a.m. So if I happen to go to sleep during my speech, just Stephen, if you could just nudge me, just wake me up. But the bottom line is that it's important to me, it's important to the Navy as well, for the Navy's leaders to really come back and talk not only to the students who could potentially be future sailors and Marines and working with us and on our ships and our aircraft, but it's also important to talk to you all. It's also important to let you know exactly what your Navy is doing today, and I will tell you that our mission has not changed. Our mission hasn't changed significantly from the day that President Washington decided to build the 6 frigates on his watch. The need for our Navy to protect global commerce still remains the same. Last week's example of one of our ships being challenged by a Russian vessel in the South China Sea was a perfect example of that. We are still a global force. We're still the ultimate naval force. And we have to stay that way. We have to do that because the world is still 70% water. 80% of all people on the face of this earth still live within 100 miles of the coastline. 90% of all commerce travels by sea. And the little known fact, 95% of all of our information actually lives and moves under the sea. So we have cables that are actually under the sea that we have to protect as well. Your Navy is on watch 100% of the time protecting those assets. So before I go too far down that road, I want to tell you just a little bit about what ESG 3 does, Expeditionary Strike Group 3, my role there. Talk to you a little bit about my journey, my 32 years in the Navy, then talk to you about the Navy the nation needs, and then my main part is I really want to take whatever questions you have. So, next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, George Washington got it right. He basically said that it follows that, so as goes the nation, as goes the Navy, goes our nation. So, he invested in our nation and in our Navy by having it written into the Constitution that a Navy shall be provided for and maintained. All the other services, you know, you raise up an Army, but if you look in Article 1 of the Constitution, Section 8, it talks about providing and maintaining a Navy. So that is why we continue to invest in the Navy. Back when I came in, we had about a 600-ship Navy under President Reagan. But the bottom line is that we won the Cold War. So there was no need for that number of ships anymore, so we started downsizing. Today, we have 289 ships. If you were to take a snapshot of a day in 86, 87, when I came in, there were about 100 ships on deployment any day of the week. Right now, if you took a snapshot, you have about 100 ships that are forward deployed and operating any day of the week. But the bottom line is we only have 289 total. So we're on a path to move back in the right direction. Congress just approved a bill for us to go back to 355 ships. So as I talked a little bit about the Navy the nation needs, I'll cover that a little bit as well. But I also have a video, and we're going to see if it actually works. And I'm getting the thumbs up from my aide here. So we're going to play a video just to kind of cage everyone's gyro. That's Navy talk. Just to make sure everyone kind of gets an understanding of what we do and how we do it and how our young sailors are doing their business at sea. So, roll the tape. Pretty cool, huh? So what's implied is that, one, we're a ready and lethal force, and that's true. At the highest end of what we do, we're designed to win. No one wants a second-class Navy, no one wants to be second, there's no prize for that. So bottom line, your Navy is the best in the world. Yes, we can defeat our adversaries, but they have closed the gap a bit. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but just to talk a little bit about what attracted me to the Navy. I literally wanted to test myself and challenge myself and see how much I could do with what God had given me. And I will tell you that part of that was also going to different countries, seeing the world, seeing how other folks lived, seeing where we could make a difference. What I've done, I think over the last 32 years, and I also have to caveat this with, my story is not necessarily about me. It's about the blessings that have been bestowed upon me in the path that I've been led to walk. And again, I told you guys that I feel like this is home, so just forgive me if it's just a little bit too transparent. But this is who I am. So what I really wanted to do is just talk a little bit about some of the countries that I've been to, some of the things I've had an opportunity to do, and just some of the highlights of my 32 years. So next slide. 76 countries total. 76. And some of them have been way more interesting than others. But it all started here. It all started, next slide. It all started right there and right here in the shadow of Williams-Brice Stadium. And to me, that foundation to me set me on a path to be able to achieve anything that I wanted to do. So next slide. And so that next picture there is a picture of a place called Djibouti. And Djibouti is actually a place in Africa. I had the opportunity to go to that country immediately following 9/11. I was part of the first deploying amphibious ready group to deploy from the United States following 9/11. So we went into Djibouti because it's located on the Horn of Africa, and it was a key place for us during the global war on terrorism. So we actually set up that camp. We actually gave the Marines and gave some of our sailors and special forces a live firing range because we were projecting the nation's power through that camp. So I will tell you that as a sailor, I did not like it. I didn't like being in camps. I didn't like MREs. Didn't like living in the desert. Didn't like any of that. I missed my stateroom, you know. When you're on a ship, you have a stateroom and you got your own galley with you, and creature comforts and life is pretty good on a ship. But you know, God bless those who actually serve in the ground forces. But I would not want to do that for a living. So it was always interesting as well. You see the pictures there of the camels on the beach. So from a state-to-state relationship, we're trying to build relationships with the nation of Djibouti. You guys saw some pictures of the landing craft that we would send ashore to take Marines ashore. One of the things that we had to make sure we didn't do was kill somebody's camel. Because that would make for a bad day with our relations with that particular country. So we were always very, very cautious about that. You know, there were nomads moving back and forth down the beach. So that was just a very, very good learning experience, but one of those things that you only want to do it once, you don't want to do it again. Next slide. So I already mentioned a little bit about the fact that I'm probably the Navy's only admiral who commanded 2 islands, USS Macon Island and USS Whidbey Island. USS Macon Island was a phenomenal ship. It was the Navy's first attempt at a hybrid propulsion ship. So we actually have gas turbine engines for high speed, electric motors for low speed. So I was putting that engineering training to use in all those STEM classes from back in the day. But the bottom line is that it was definitely the Navy's opportunity to try to transition from the old steam-driven ships to something new and improved. And it's still informing how we design ships today. And one of the things that I'm talking to a lot of our students about now is just really doing well academically, being focused on STEM, really tough calculus, physics, and classes like that, because it puts you on a path to command ships like this, to be aviators, nuclear, submariners, so on and so forth. So this was a great opportunity. We actually took the ship into Hong Kong And yes, we did draw a lot of attention from the Chinese government when we did that, but it was really, really a good deployment, and we enjoyed it. Next slide. So following that tour, that ship was, to me, one of the highlights of my career because I had about 3,000 sailors and Marines on that ship. So envision something that's about 3 football fields long and basically a floating airport, projecting power, and this guy from Sumter being in command of it. It was actually pretty cool to be a part of that. And so I was blessed and fortunate enough to go from that job to work on Capitol Hill. And so in my job on Capitol Hill, we had the opportunity to travel to more countries, including Afghanistan. We would always leave, actually I had the opportunity on many of those trips to go with Senator Graham. And that was actually pretty cool for me because I honestly think we probably were the only 2 South Carolina grads on Capitol Hill. But he actually was still serving. There are a few, is that 3 minutes or is that 3 South Carolina grads? Gotta speed up. Okay. So bottom line, he was serving as an Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Colonel Jagcor, and he would actually go to Afghanistan, do his reserve duty, and then the other senators and I would actually fly out and meet him, and then he would join our congressional delegation, and then we go visit with, not only the leadership of Afghanistan, but other locations there. So it was just really neat working that closely with him. But next slide. But I also had the opportunity, not sure if you can make that picture out, to serve closely with Senator McCain. So over the course of the 2 years that I worked on Capitol Hill, usually I was the military escort for those 2 gentlemen and any other senators that wanted to go with them. So the interesting thing about that picture there with Senator McCain, that's actually taken in Vietnam. There's a monument dedicated to him at the crash site where he was shot down in Vietnam, and they literally treated him like royalty. So following taking that picture, we actually toured the Hanoi Hilton. And he led the tour talking about, the different things that were going on, while he was there as a prisoner of war. So it was just a phenomenal experience to be that close to an American hero. And it was impactful last year when he passed away, and reminded me that I needed to step up my servant leadership just because of the service and the servant leadership that he demonstrated. Next slide. And speaking of service, I had the opportunity to serve again. So during the tour there on Capitol Hill, I got selected for flag officer, and then from that, I got to pay penance and lived in Key West for 2 years. So that was tough duty. But while we were there in Key West, Hurricane Matthew rolled through. And Hurricane Matthew initially was headed for our headquarters and then made a right turn and headed for Haiti. So seeing an opportunity to make a difference and to possibly help save some lives, alleviate some suffering, I volunteered to go down as the Joint Task Force Commander. So a bunch of Marines, about 270 of them, were embarked on helicopters, flew to Grand Cayman. I flew from Key West, met them there, took command of the unit. We went down and we were actually moving relief supplies within 24 hours after the storm passed. And I understand, and I know that Matthew came up and it scraped the U.S. and hit South Carolina as well. But fortunately, it wasn't as devastating as some of the other storms. It wasn't nearly as devastating as Irma when Irma came through, because we ended up evacuating out of Key West that following year. But it was a great opportunity, again, just to volunteer, just to be a servant leader. So since my age now giving me the 1 minute left, I'll accelerate this discussion because I do want to take your questions. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, usually some of the first responders for any of the humanitarian assist mission from a maritime perspective are the Naval Expeditionary Forces. So one of my duties is the disaster support to civil authorities. So on the West Coast, where we reside, we're always ready to render assistance if there's an earthquake, if there's, Hawaii actually got hit with 2 hurricanes last year. we were ready and our forces were ready to support that. But we also have other assets. If you look in the upper left corner there, and you probably saw that from the video, that's a picture of the F-35 Bravo, which is our 5th generation fighter. This is the next generation beyond the F-18 fighter, and it's already deployed on our ships, and we're already looking at how do we actually build more of these and how do we get them deployed a little bit quicker. Just moving down to the lower right-hand corner, that's a picture of the Commandant of the Marine Corps and the CNO of the Navy. Actually, they're on one of our battlefields as we were conducting an exercise earlier this year, demonstrating naval integration between the Navy and Marine Corps. So we're continuing to move the ball forward, not only from a technological standpoint and advancing the equipment we have, but also from a tactics standpoint and how we actually operate. Next slide. And here's the why. You know, great power competition, like I mentioned earlier, it's real. And we've got adversaries that are trying to close the gap. Next slide. You guys are familiar with Russia and China. Next. And you know that they tend to be the biggest nuisance in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, typically, for the Russians, and then South China Sea, typically, for the Chinese. But as you saw last week, the Russians have now decided to start becoming a nuisance in the South China Sea as well. Next slide. And there's the ever-present North Korea, Iran, and the violent extremist operators. We're always cognizant of what they're doing and where they're doing it from. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So the Navy that the nation needs is a Navy that's bigger than it is, and like I said, we're actually growing better than it is. We're improving the equipment that we have, the way that we do business, so on and so forth. But it's also a Navy that's networked, with all of the pieces of equipment talking to one another, sharing information. More importantly, it's a Navy that's operating with a talented force. And like I mentioned earlier, we're competing not only against other services, but also against public and private sector to get the best of the best and get the right students in those seats so that we can continue advancing our technology. I had the opportunity earlier today to visit R2I2 over at Richmond District 2. And I was amazed at what the students are doing there. I mean, they have a 3D printing lab, and they're actually doing some remarkable things, which is very similar to what we're doing on our ship. So getting that type of talent into our Navy uniform is one of the things that's key to us. I talked a little bit about hybrid propulsion. That's one of the changes we're going through, but we're also looking for other avenues to expand not only hybrid propulsion, but also going to electrical propulsion drive. Next slide. And so whenever I have the opportunity to talk to young students or possibly young sailors and Marines, I always talk with them about 3 big things. And these are things I learned in Sumter growing up from my parents. Dream big was the first thing. And if you think about our Navy and where we started with ships of sail, evolving from that to ships of coal, so to speak, coal and steam, evolving from that to hybrid propulsion drive. And if you look in the lower right-hand corner, that's a picture of the USS Zumwalt. That is a completely electrically powered ship with directed energy weapon systems and so on and so forth. So bottom line is that we're completely evolving the Navy and the way we do business. Next slide. But dream big doesn't work by itself. You've got to work hard as well. There are no easy paths. So our sailors are all well trained and they certainly do a great job, but none of it's going to be easy. Next slide. And never quit. In the upper left-hand corner there, you see a picture of an island that was built by the Chinese in the South China Sea. So what they've done is they took a rock and they built it out to make it a militarized base. And they're also making international claims about how close our other assets can come to it. So we can't permit that for the reasons that I mentioned earlier as far as global commerce goes. But we're certainly up to the fight. Next slide. And last but not least, over the course of my 32 years, it's become evident to me that we have got to know our why. Why are we serving? Why are we doing what we do? And I will submit to you that I think our founding fathers got it right. I really do. And for me, the why that works for me is faith, family, nation, Navy. Starting with faith, that's the beginning and end of everything for me. Not saying that works for everyone else, but for me, with my family here, faith is the foundation of all things. You have to have faith not only in a higher power, but also in your institutional systems that we have in place. Family, I feel that when the founding fathers put our country together and put the rules in place, they weren't necessarily thinking about themselves. They weren't thinking about the British government, the tyranny. They were thinking about their kids. They were thinking about their children, their children's children, and setting the conditions for them to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. From a nation standpoint, like I said, I've been to 76 countries, and there is not one of them that I would want my kids and my grandkids to grow old in. As great as our nation is, it could always be better, and if you think about it, over the course of our 240 plus years, we've continuously improved, and I would submit that we're still on that path. And the bottom line is to protect all of that. This nation needs a strong Navy. And we're certainly on the path to build that nation that the Navy needs. But in addition to those things that I listed earlier, in addition to having a talented workforce, in addition to being agile and worldwide deployable, your Navy also has to be ready. If it's not ready, then it's not relevant. So if the equipment doesn't work when it's supposed to, if we can't get underway and go to Haiti or go somewhere else when we actually need to do a relief mission, or worse, need to do a combat mission, then it's completely irrelevant. So I just wanted to share those things with you, and I will open it up for a couple of questions, but I will remind you also that I worked on Capitol Hill, so I know how not to answer questions. Yes, sir.
I noticed your ship designs, everything above the waterline seems to be swept inward and smaller instead of outward. What's that doing for you engineering-wise?
So you're talking about the USS Zumwalt ship design. That's specifically designed to reduce the radar signature on that ship. So lots of engineers have looked at it, and if you look at an older ship like my old ship, like Macon Island, when you hit a radar on that ship, you get a huge return signal. And for those of us who are warriors, that means you're a huge target. And so they've reduced the radar signature just to reduce the detectability of that ship. Yes, sir.
Regarding that same ship, off and on there's discussion about the EMP, electromagnetic pulse. Is that taken into account?
So, like I said before, I've worked on Capitol Hill. I know how not to answer questions. Yes, sir, Mr. Covington.
Can you tell us how many submarines we have in active duty right now? Is that
Like I said before. No, sir, I did not.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm a techie, and I want to know, in your opinion, what is the coolest piece of equipment that you've ever used that you're allowed to talk about?
So I'm biased, but the coolest piece of equipment that I've ever used was the USS Macon Island. And the reason I say that is because typically a ship like that would be the first ship of a class. So you would go through a whole lot of testing and procedures, and it actually takes a little bit longer because you're going through so many steps. But the Navy literally took additional risks to innovate and get that ship operational quicker. So we were literally on deployment figuring out how things worked, and it was up to the crew to come up with the good ideas on the best way to make it work. But by doing so, we helped inform all the future ships. So now our sister ships don't have those problems because we figured it out for them the hard way. But to me, I think that was the neatest piece of equipment. Yes, sir.
What's your toughest leadership decision you've had to make?
Decision. Toughest leadership decision that I had to make. Wow, that's a tough one. How much time do we have? 3 minutes. So in less than 3 minutes, I would say the toughest tour from a leadership standpoint was the first island that I commanded, which was USS Whidbey Island. Smaller ship, smaller crew, less experienced crew. Significant discipline problems there when I arrived, significant material problems, but we worked our way through it. But that was by far the most challenging tour of my career. Yes, sir.
First of all, Admiral Pringle, we're really excited to have you here. We're very proud as a fellow Gamecock that you are representing the Gamecock Nation the way you are. Two things. On the 75th anniversary of D-Day, that hydrofoil that hit the beach, is that a practical application? If we had that back then, those tubes subject to being blown up and not floating, and the second part of the question is, pirates on sea right now seems to be an escalating problem. How big a problem is that for us, those who go out and recreate in deep sea?
So the answer to both of those questions is actually in the same vein. We don't do anything alone in a contested environment. If we've got enemy fires coming in, it's going to be a joint fight. So I think the thing that allows our LCACs, landing craft air cushion vehicles, those hydrofoils that you mentioned, the thing that allows them to get to the beach is the support from other entities providing that supporting fires. And it's the exact same, whether you're talking about, D-Day or anything else, it's a joint fight.
One more, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I just want to say thank you for what the Navy does when it comes to the ROTC for the folks that are in high school. My nephew just graduated from Chapin High as a battalion commanding officer, and is going.
I met him. He's a sharp young man.
He is. Thank you. He's going to Auburn on a full ROTC scholarship to major in aerospace engineering, and that's because of what he learned from all the folks at Chapin High School, and it's just been phenomenal. So thank y'all for what you do for these young people.
Thank you, ma'am. So I'm going to violate my A's guidance here, and I'm going to take one last question because I know I missed a hand. Yes, ma'am.
Well, the Navy was pivotal in World War II to places like Midway and also at D-Day. My father was actually at D-Day at LST. So what's changed? What's the same and what's different between those two times?
So I think the biggest thing that's changed is, like I mentioned earlier, it's a joint fight. I'm representing the Navy and I'm talking about the need for the Navy, but realistically, anything that we do will be a joint fight. And not to start a discussion about Space Force or anything like that, but Space Force is an idea whose time has come. Just like back in World War II, the Air Force, shortly after World War II, the Air Force was an idea whose time had come. So bottom line, anything that we do in a contested environment from this point forward, it's not going to be an independent operation by one service. It's going to be a joint operation with assets both, above the sea, on the sea, under the sea, as well as in space. Hope that answers your question. All right, well, thanks again for inviting me back.
Admiral Pringle just taught us to dream big, work hard, and never quit. Thank you so much for the example that you set for our youth, but for all of us today, because those lessons, I think, always apply. We'd like to give you a small token of appreciation for coming here today. It's got the likeness of Paul Harris on one side and the rotary four-way test on the other. Thank you so much for being with us today.
So for those of you in the military, you know it's customary not to be coined and not returned a coin. So with that, I have my personal coin of the commander of the Navy's largest strike group, that's me, and wanted to present that to you. Thank you for having me here.
All right, what a special program we had today. Next week, we have President-elect Louisa back from Germany, which is fantastic, and she has put together Another great speaker, William Hubbard, is coming. He's the past president of the American Bar Association. So please come and bring a guest. And with that, we will close in song.